How are you guys doing? Today is Thursday, November 19th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to take you through yesterday's 2020 NBA draft as the 2020 1920 NBA season had ended with my Lakers championship profile. This is the next episode that I'm going to do, as this is the first episode of the newest 2020-2021 season, which starts when the NBA draft starts. So I'm just giving you a quick rundown of what happened yesterday. First, to start off from the top, Anthony Edwards out of Georgia was taken first overall in the 2020 NBA draft by the Minnesota Timberwolves, who look to put him alongside D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns as the Timberwolves try to establish themselves as a very scary young core in the West. And of course, Anthony Edwards coming out of Georgia, all the credit to him. He's a kid from growing up in the same part of Atlanta where I grew up. And, of course, Edwards can make the most of the situation in Minnesota. With the second pick overall, the Golden State Warriors. Yes, the same Golden State Warriors that won 3 out of 4 straight championships in the mid-2010s. They ended up drafting James Wiseman with the second pick after finding out that Klay Thompson, their elite shooting guard, went down with another injury, especially following his ACL injury, over a year ago. But of course, this is a big pickup by the Golden State Warriors. They needed James Wiseman, who's kind of big and long, that can space the team out. I kind of like this pick. With the third overall pick, the Charlotte Hornets picked up the only player in the NBA draft that I had already made an elite profile for, a LaMelo Ball. As of course they're missing a number one go-to player. LaMelo Ball looks as though he can kind of fit that mold. This is probably the best draft pick, or the best individual player that Michael Jordan has drafted since he's become the owner of the Charlotte Hornets. And I'm very curious as to see how LaMelo Ball can completely shape this team, especially playing in the same division as Trae Young in the Miami Heat, and now Cole Anthony on the Orlando Magic. With the fourth pick, Chicago surprised the world and drafted the SEC Sixth Man of the Year, the ACC Sixth Man of the Year, Patrick Williams out of Florida State, with a lot of other big players that were available. With the fifth pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers took Isaac Okoro, the do-it-all wing player out of Auburn. Reminds me a lot of DeAndre Hunter, and of course he's very physical, very tall, very long, and he has a lot to bring to the game. With the sixth pick, the Atlanta Hawks were able to draft Onyeka Okongwu, who played on the Chino Hills team with all three Ball brothers when they were the number one high school team in the nation. This is the first time 2 players from the same public high school ended up getting drafted, or 3 players from the same public high school ended up getting drafted in the NBA draft, and they all play for the same team, which is very impressive. And now he's going to fit into a young Atlanta Hawks core alongside John Collins, and now Clint Capella with Trae Young tossing him lobs along with Cam Reddish and Kevin Huerter. This is going to be a very interesting situation, and Onyeka is just going to be yet another amazing draft pick with the Atlanta Hawks. With the 7th pick, the Detroit Pistons selected Killian Hayes out of France, of course, the first international player that was drafted. Of course, he's going to turn a lot of heads. 8th pick overall is Obi Toppin, the reigning 2019-20 college basketball player of the year out of Dayton. And considering the draft picks the New York Knicks have made considering past picks they've made with around the 8th pick, this is probably one of the better drafts that the New York Knicks have had, the best individual player that they've drafted. And I think Obi Toppin, along with R.J. Barrett and Mitch Robinson, can probably make a difference. At 9, the Washington Wizards selected Danny Avdija out of Israel, and of course his presence is going to help with Rui Hachimura and a young Wizards core that's trying to kind of find their way through the NBA. But of course, it's a good pickup, as he was the highest touted international prospect. And many people feel as though he fell to them. With the 10th pick, the Phoenix Suns selected Jalen Smith out of Maryland, who's a big, tall, rim running power forward who plays both ways. He has a very long wingspan, and of course he can shoot. Of course, this versatility is something that the Phoenix Suns needed, and that rounds out the top 10. Out of the players that a lot of people know. Just to finish up the lottery with the 11th pick, the San Antonio Spurs picked Devin Vassell out of Florida State. Not a bad pick, considering they're considering getting rid of DeMar DeRozan this season. So of course they're going to try to mold another first-round draft pick in DeRozan's place. With the 12th pick, the Sacramento Kings were able to get Tyrese Halliburton out of Ohio State, and of course with their core Marvin Bagley still waiting to come back to the league. They already have De'Aaron Fox. It's going to be a very interesting addition to the young Sacramento Kings core, as this team didn't make the playoffs, where they look to hope to next season. With the 13th pick, the New Orleans Pelicans, added Kieran Lewis Jr. out of Alabama to see if he can complement Lonzo Ball and Zion Williamson. And, of course, Aaron Nesmith out of Vanderbilt finished out the lottery for the Boston Celtics at number 14. At number 15, the Magic were able to select Cole Anthony out of UNC, the son of Greg Anthony. And a really interesting young prospect. They're going to put him alongside Markelle Fultz. And like I said, playing in the same division as Trae Young and now LaMelo Ball. Cole Anthony has to prove to a lot of people that the Magic did not reach, of course, when they were trying to get him. Continuing on, I think another big pickup at number 18 was Josh Green going to the Dallas Mavericks, because he's a very intelligent basketball player and he runs really well in space. I think he's going to work incredibly well with this Dallas Mavericks offense. It's probably not going to be right away when he starts really contributing, but over time he's going to end up being one of their better players. At 21, Tyrese Maxey went to the Philadelphia 76ers. A really interesting move now with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers now being the new coach. And Tyrese Maxey was one of the better Kentucky players that's come out in recent years. I'm surprised he got drafted so low. But I know that he's a really good basketball player, and that's eventually going to translate. Finishing out on the players that I know in the first round, Udoka Azubuike out of Kansas is going to the Utah Jazz with the 27th pick. RJ Hampton, after playing in Australia, goes to the Bucks with the 24th pick. And not much trade action going on in the first round, and then jumping out to the second round. First pick of the second round was Tyrell Terry for the Dallas Mavericks out of Stanford, another very intelligent player. He's kind of on the smaller end, but he has a very high basketball IQ, and it'll be very interesting to see what he adds to this offense. Second pick of the second round was Vernon Carey out of Duke, the very first Duke player taken off the board. He's going to be paired with LaMelo Ball and a lot of interesting young players in Charlotte. Theo Maledon is going to go to the Philadelphia 76ers. I think he's going to be a very interesting player. Trey Jones, reigning ACC Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year from Duke, is going to go to the San Antonio Spurs with the 41st pick. Continuing on, Jordan Nwora out of Louisville going to the Bucks. Nico Mannion from Arizona going to the Warriors. Kenyon Martin Jr., after playing at Sierra Canyon and IMG, he's going to go to the Sacramento Kings. Cassius Stanley from Duke is going to go to the Indiana Pacers. Cassius Winston, the 4-year point guard from Michigan State, is going to play for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then the last pick was Sam Merrill out of Utah State going to the New Orleans Pelicans. So like I said, very interesting draft. There are probably going to be players that I haven't even mentioned. I have no idea what they're about, but we're going to see what they're about in the NBA. And considering that there's no training camp this year, they're just going to start the season on December 22nd. We're going to jump right into the season, and of course, you can't start the season without the draft. And with that said, I really appreciate everyone for listening to all 8.5 minutes of this. Once again, it is Thursday, November 19, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I wish all the best for all these NBA players on their new teams, and of course, even the players that weren't drafted that were signed to teams last night. This is the beginning of an amazing NBA career path. And with that said, let's see how many of these players I'm going to look back and say, okay, they came out of the 2020 NBA draft class. With that said, I appreciate everyone for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you tomorrow following tonight's Thursday Night Football game.